Hi folks, Harry Frank from GrayMachine.com. Today we're going to talk about expressions. Now, you may know that I've produced a training series on expressions, so why am I releasing a free tutorial on the basics of expressions? Well, I wanted to do the absolute basics, like from square one. What is an expression? What does it do? How do you use it? And what doesn't it do? Because I see a lot of people very confused about this, like where do I even put an expression if I have it? And how do I modify it? How do I add one? What's it going to do for me? Why do I need them? That kind of stuff. So I thought I'd take a step back and post a very basic tutorial on expressions. And then at the end of the lesson, you'll get my sales pitch on the training series for expressions. If you are interested in them, there's a very reasonable priced training series on them. But first, let's talk about what expressions are. Expressions are a JavaScript-based scripting language in After Effects that allow the manipulation of key frameable properties. Now, there's a lot of scary words in here like JavaScript and scripting language, but by and large, most expressions consist of simple addition and subtraction, occasional multiplication and division, and on occasion you get into things that are a little more complicated than that, but by and large, day in, day out, when I'm creating expressions, most of the expressions, like 85% of them, consist of a very basic operation of this plus that, or this minus that, or this times that. So if you've gotten through even basic math, not even into algebra, you can use expressions. You don't need to know any JavaScript. There's a lot of tools in there to help you get around understanding the JavaScript language. And let's be clear on this. Expressions are not JavaScript. They are based on JavaScript and they share a lot of common commands, but there are a lot of things that JavaScript has that expressions do not use. So don't consider expressions on JavaScript to be the same thing because they really aren't. Expressions are just based on the JavaScript language. Also, don't get confused with this word scripting language because there are things in After Effects that are called scripts. And scripts are different than expressions. Scripts are executed through the file menu. Expressions are local to a specific property, which this brings me to a very important point, is that expressions can only do what keyframes can do. So you're never going to program anything other than what you can keyframe manually. The reason we use expressions is that we can animate very complex tasks very quickly and easily with some basic expressions. So don't think that expressions are going to do any sort of like light rays or glowing effects or anything like that. Expressions only go where keyframes can go. So that said, expressions are only used on properties where we can add keyframes like position or scale or opacity, or if we apply effect like blur. We've got properties like blurriness or blur dimensions. These things are keyframeable and we can also manipulate them with expressions. So anything you can keyframe, you can put an expression on. Well, mostly. And this kind of changes from version to version. Mostly what I'm talking about are masks and vector shapes. This seems to kind of be evolving in the body of After Effects in terms of how we can manipulate them. So by and large, anything you can keyframe, you can put an expression on, but there are a small number of exceptions like masks and other vector properties, and you'll know them when you find them. But by and large, any sort of like blurriness or position or scale or anything like that, we can put an expression on and control it or modify it with an expression. So let's say you find a cool expression on the internet and you want to use it on your text here, like this word expressions. First and foremost, I need to decide where I'm going to be applying my expression. It's very important to understand that expressions only control one property at a time. If I put an expression on position, I am only going to control position. If I put an expression on scale, I'm only going to control scale. A scale expression cannot control anything else other than scale. Again, it's just like keyframing, but it's more of an automated task. So instead of using keyframes, we're going to use a simple expression that will abscond from the internet and apply it to our word expressions here. Now I'm going to jump over here to mograph.net where you will find me probably a little too much, but there's a discussion going on here about 5 expressions that will just change your life forever. And one of these is called throw. So the author was kind enough to put a little description up here, and then down here we've got the code that is our expression. So we're going to copy that and put this in our position. Again, this is moving. Moving is a function of position. So I want to put this expression into a position property. So I'm going to go over here to my text layer and create an expression for position. Now the way I do this, I'm on a Mac. I hold on the Option key and click the stopwatch next to the property that I'd like to put the expression on. If you're in Windows, just hold on the Alt key. So when I say hold on the Option key, if you're on Windows, just assume I mean hold on the Alt key. So I'm going to hold on the Option key and click the stopwatch next to the position property. And now we've created an expression for position. Now I've copied that code, so I'm just going to paste that expression into this position property. So now we'll see what this expression does. And it slowly moves to the left. So let's take a look at what's going on here. On the very first line, the author was kind enough to put a little description as to what goes on. 2 forward slashes like this denote a comment. So anything after those 2 forward slashes on this line are completely ignored by the expression. And it's always a good idea to put a little descriptor at the beginning of your expression when you're creating them. Below that, we have something called a variable. So this velocity, as it stands for, is equal to a number of -10. And then again, we see these 2 forward slashes and a little user comment here. And this says horizontal velocity in pixels per second. So this variable right here is something that we are to go in and change. You know, we could go in and we can make this horizontal velocity a lot faster. So we can make this from -10 to maybe 100. This is going to move over time 100 pixels per second. And it's really just as simple as that. When you are very new at expressions and you are looking at expressions that other people have written, you might get a little confused as to what's this supposed to be for. Well, first clue is that you really need to look at what the user has originally written it for, what property it's supposed to go on. Because the reason I bring this up is that if I copy this and I put this on opacity, we're going to get an error. Now this is explained a lot more in my training series, but the bottom line is if you're a very new expressions user, most of the time you can look at the very last line of the expression and see what we've got there. Right here we've got 2 variables, 2 little letters here, x and y. Now up here in position, this works just great because we have x and y that we're fulfilling. Technically, we can actually leave z out and it just ignores it, but just know that right here we have x and y, and these are going into x and y of our position. Opacity only has one value that defines what it is. So if we supply 2 values, it's going to get a little confused and it's going to give us an error. In fact, that error says this expression must be in the dimension of 1, not 2. This is 2 dimensions, x and y, and opacity is just 1 dimension. So odds are, if you're using an expression and you're getting an error right off the bat, and you're very new at expressions, you're probably using an expression in a place that it's not actually designed for. So let me get rid of this opacity expression, and let's jump back to our forum here and find another expression that we can use. Here we've got another expression, same as throw, but for rotation. So down here we've got the code, so I'm going to copy this, and we'll paste this to our rotation. So I'm going to create an expression by holding down Option and clicking the stopwatch next to rotation, and I'm pasting that expression that I got. So now this is a constant spin on our rotation. Notice I'm using a 2-dimensional layer here. So if we take a look at this, we have our comment up here because it starts with 2 forward slashes. We have a variable that defines what we can change here, what we can easily change without diving into the guts of the expression itself. We have a simple rotational velocity in degrees per second. So at 1 second, this is going to be 1 full revolution. So if I were to change this to 180, we would have half a revolution at the 1 second mark. So down here we have all of our math, and then we have one value that concludes the entire expression. Now, like up here, we had two values. This went into x and y. Down here, we have just one value for rotation. Now, just because we have revolutions and degrees, I want you to remember to think of rotation as just a single number. 360 degrees is one full revolution. 720 degrees is two full revolutions. As this value r increases and surpasses 360, it just becomes revolutions and degrees. But again, it's just one value, and that's why this is working here. So you might guess, if you're starting to pick up on this, if I were to copy this and paste it up here, we're also going to get an error up here. Expression must be a result of dimension 2, not 1. We are specifying one value, and this would like to see two values, and we need to account for x and y. Now, I'm not going to go into the specifics on how to define x and y position. Those are called arrays, and that is actually all the way into lesson 2 of the expression series. So it's a little bit to cover right now, but you now have the basics to at least find expressions on the internet, copy and paste them, and do a little troubleshooting, and know where to put them, and know what to look for if you start to run into problems. Now, one more thing. You might be wondering what to do with these once you start accumulating a lot of expressions that you'd like to hold on to. Well, you could copy and paste these and put them on a sticky note or text file or whatever, but there's a better way to do this. I'm going to go to the Effects and Presets window, and I'm going to select this position property right here. Now, this position property has this expression on it. So, if I save this as an animation preset, so if I go to Animation, Save Animation Preset, I'm going to navigate to the Presets folder inside my Application folder. Now, this should be the default location in both the Mac and Windows version of After Effects. So inside there's a Presets folder. Now, I have created a folder called Favorites, and I'm going to put this throw expression, remember it's called the throw, into this folder. So I'll just type throw. Now I've already got one in here. I'm going to hit save, and it's going to overwrite it. However, once it's saved, we can go to the Effects and Presets folder and go to the After Effects CS3 presets, and then there's my favorites folder. Inside here, I've got this throw effect that I've just saved. Now, if I would like to reuse this on another piece of text, so now I can grab this preset here and throw it right on this layer. And now it is going to move over time. If I hit EE, it's going to show my expressions on there, and we see we've got the throw. So if I wanted to save that spin expression that's on this rotation of this word expressions, just hit R, and this is my rotation expression. So select the rotation property. Now, instead of going to Animation, Save, I'm going to go over here and just double click right in the Effects and Presets window and save this spin. And again, we're going to overwrite the old one. So now it's in my favorites folder. So if I type spin, we'll see that spin is in there. So I can go to this word here and throw spin on there. Now that is spinning just like the other one. Now, one thing to watch out for, if I go in here and I specifically select a property like position, and then I apply this preset, it's going to try to apply that expression to that property. And again, just like we had before, we're going to get an error on saying that we're having a mismatch of dimensions. So just know that you don't want to select a specific property, you just want to select the layer itself and throw the expression right on there, and it'll work just fine. So if you'd like to learn a lot more about expressions, simply go to toolfarm.com/training. I've produced a nice little series with Toolfarm, good friends of mine, and you'll see the After Effects Expressions Training Series, and click on that, and you'll see my lovely picture and some overviews and even a little promo for the series. However, if you don't even get that far, you've at least got the tools that you've gotten for free from me on how to use expressions that you find on the internet and how to do some basic troubleshooting with them. So I hope you've enjoyed this lesson, and you can go buy my series now. So thanks.